Hey everyone, hope you are doing well and welcome back to another video here on the channel. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the delay function on a cheap $100 radio. However, there is a limitation to this and we'll get into that when we explain how to actually program this function into the radio. Now the radio that we're talking about is going to be from Radiolink. This is the RC6GS radio. It is the version 3 of this radio. It is a decent radio for the price that you pay. I think I brought it in for 115 Canadian plus the local taxes that we would otherwise pay. And it's a really good radio for what it's worth with excellent amounts of range. And it does have this functionality that I have found within the radio that places a delay on the throttle. Now, why would you need a throttle delay? Well, when it comes to the guys who are doing speed runs, with a speed run, you may want to have a delay so that you can effectively apply power to the vehicle in a nice linear fashion. Although linear might not be the most optimal way of doing it, a linear fashion will make it a lot more controllable throughout the range of throttle as it's being applied and that car gets up to speed. If you accelerate too hard, the wheels spin and you end up sideways. And if you accelerate too slowly, you never are able to achieve the top speed of that car. So there's a fine line between hitting that top speed and going sideways there as you begin to accelerate that car. This is great functionality for the speed run guys. If you're taking your car out there quite far, it's difficult to see, and it's also, more importantly, especially for me, difficult to hear. As soon as you end up starting to get the car rolling, I like to be able to hear that noise. And when it's out there far and in the environment, it's quite loud. This is where I find it extremely challenging seeing and hearing it, both of those combined, to be able to pick it out correctly, how fast the car is moving and how much more throttle you can actually apply. Having a more linear throttle curve is going to help control the amount of current that you're pulling out of the battery. It's going to keep it obviously more linear, where you're going to accelerate at that constant rate, but you're not going to have the spikes in acceleration that you would otherwise have when you pull the throttle a little bit quicker. By avoiding these large spikes, you minimize the amount of voltage drop so that the battery does not need to recover back to where it was if it were to be in a linear throttle curve. In other radio control car applications such as rock crawling, you may want to apply a throttle delay, especially on the low end of the throttle range, in order to make sure that you're able to scale the rock in such a way where you don't cause an excessive amount of wheel spin. So this is another area where you can use throttle delay to your advantage. Now let me know in the comment section below if you believe that using a throttle delay is cheating. Now that we know that, let's go ahead, take a look at this radio and see exactly how we can apply throttle delay in a couple different ways to this model. Here's the main window that we access when we turn the radio on. From here, we want to access all of the different menu options to change parameters. We can do that by pressing and holding the exit and enter button. We do that for just a couple seconds there and we gain access to all of these menu options. Now I'm going to go and scroll down to the option that says throttle speed. So that is number 7 right here. I'm going to enter the throttle speed menu. From here, we can see that this mode is off. We're not using it. What we can do is we can turn it on. Now, when we turn it on, we can access this by just entering in using our enter button, and then we can press the plus button, and you can see the different options. We have the option of off, we have the option of speed 1, and we have the option of speed 2. And we'll talk about both of them. So if you want a delay that is not going to affect the time that we end up going from our neutral point on the radio is going to be this spot right here. If you don't want a delay when you come from full throttle back to the brake, this is where you're going to want to use the throttle speed control speed 1. Speed 1 is going to give you a delay as you press the throttle, but you're not going to get a delay from when you're using the throttle and you're returning back to neutral and entering that brake. So here of 100%, 100 is going to represent no delay. So we can choose speed 1. We can go and change that value from here. I'm going to drop it all the way down to the bottom so you get a sense of the lower limit that this has access to. So you can choose any value from here. It's going to pretty much linearly change from the most amount of delay that you can access all the way to 100, which is the least amount of delay, essentially no delay. So now that we have that selected, we can go exit out of that, and then you can see the throttle there. I'm going to squeeze the trigger and it'll show us how much delay that we have. So there's the throttle trigger being pressed, and then you can see it returning right back to that neutral point right away. So that's the important part of this throttle setting that we have enabled. It turns off automatically and you can enter brake right away. If you're running speed run vehicles, this is what you need. So now let's access some other menu of speed. Now we can go in, back in the menu, and we access the throttle speed. And instead of speed 1, we're going to go up to speed 2. We're going to use this one. Now it has 3 different settings. We have a low range, we have a high range, and then we have this TGP1. So what's happening here is you have the ability to control your low speed, and you can set the low speed from your neutral point up to 30% of that throttle sweep. When you pull the trigger on the throttle, the 30% mark of that sweep is going to fall under the low point. This is your switching point when you want it to switch from the low setting to the high setting. So let's go ahead and change this. We're going to change the low. We're going to bring that down to, let's say, a number of 50. So we get here up to 50, and then we can see we got it set for 30. Let's change, instead of 30, we're going to change our switching point to about 50. So what I'm expecting here at 50 is to get a delay once we have about half throttle applied. And we're going to make this a little more obvious. Instead of 50, let's go all the way to the bottom and access the maximum amount of delay so we can really see what's going on here. So I'm going to exit out of that, and I'm going to exit back to our main menu. So now that we go and squeeze the trigger, you can see that there's a delay on it, and it's going up. And then once it hits 50%, the speed goes right to 100% maximum speed, no delay at that 50% mark. And then there is a delay back coming off of the throttle. So that's the important thing to know about speed 2 is you get this delay on the throttle as it returns, which is no good if you need to have quick reactions within whatever you're trying to drive. So now let's go back in and try one more thing. I think you get the idea. We're going to go and change this from low. We're going to go back to the main. If you just press both these buttons, you're going to access the default setting if I press the plus and minus at the same time. So we don't need to go and scroll all the way back to 100. However, I don't know how to do that for getting the minimum setting. So we're going to drop our high down to 0, and we're going to go through this again. So we're just coming up at 0. I'm going to enter that, exit, exit, and we'll be able to see the throttle mode here. So I squeeze the throttle trigger here, and you can see we get maximum amount of throttle response until we get to that 50%, and that's when our delay starts now on the high end. So that's essentially how you control and put the delay in. Now if we want to turn it off, obviously we go in here and we just set this to off, and now we've disabled that throttle delay. That's how you set up the radio, and you've probably seen, if you're a speedrun guy, the problem and limitation with this radio. The big limitation with this radio is the minimum amount of delay, or the maximum amount of delay, the minimum value that you program in being 0. 0 represents about a 2-second delay, and 2 seconds, it might be good for rock crawlers who are trying to scale some rocks and that sort of thing, but for the guys that are doing speedruns, a 2-second delay is not enough. My recommendation is you absolutely need to find a radio that has a 5 or 6 second delay minimum in order to get some decent speed run numbers in. This is to help control the amount of acceleration. If you only use 2 seconds, you're going to run into the situation where you're going to have the tires spin out because 2 seconds is simply not enough time, not enough delay in order to hit maximum speed. Well guys, that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, like the video if you do. Don't forget to hit that sub button so I can see you guys in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching. See you in the next one.